Good evening, everyone. My name is Annie Starkey, and I'm an elite leader with a fabulous Live Clean company called Modere. This is another one of our Live Clean health seminars that we run on a regular basis. And tonight it's my great pleasure to introduce you to John Ellerman. John Ellerman is the creator of the Modere Probiotic, and we are very, very, very blessed to have him working powerfully with us as a company, and more importantly, willing to come and help us educate our customers, our social marketers, and people that we can actually make a huge difference to. So I've got John online with me tonight. John, are you there?
Yes, I am, Annie. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. So just want to give you a warm welcome and to hand the webinar over to you tonight. We were just talking before the event, and John just said to me, I've got so much information in so little time. And I said, well, why don't we make this 2 webinars? Why don't we make it webinar 1, and then we can actually do webinar 2, and we have an opportunity to answer any questions you may have, because John's going to present fabulous information to us tonight. But there's a lot of things that a lot of fantastic information around probiotics, and you may have a question or you may want something answered. So we were wondering whether you'd be kind enough to put your questions in the question box below, or the chat group below, or question box really, and then we can write them down and have them the basis of webinar number 2. So how does that sound, John?
Sounds fabulous, because that was the one thing that I was worried about. I don't want to skim over things that people really might want to know more about, but on the other hand, there's so much, we'll just lose a lot of people's attention. If we exceed their attention span, it's counterproductive.
That's exactly right. So that's exactly why we want to we'll spread it over the 2 weeks, and it won't be next week because I've got another special one for next week, but it might be in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, no. John, I'm going to hand it over to you. So
okay, thanks, Annie. All right, I'll start my stopwatch and get ready to go. Okay, I want to focus initially in this presentation on the what, the how, and the why of the Modere Probiotic, and I'm hoping that you can all see my screen. And I'll once I get this thing working, next slide. Yep. I'll give you the background. We call it a super symbiotic simply because there's a synergy that happens between the probiotic cultures, the good bugs that we supply in this product, and the prebiotics or fiber ingredients that feed the probiotics as they go down the gastrointestinal tract. And there's a kind of double or even triple boost effect, a boost on top of a boost. So we call it super symbiotic, and it leaves probiotics in the dust because it's so much ahead of them in terms of the numbers. And numbers is important in terms of their ability to fight the trillions of bad bacteria that a lot of people have got in their gut. So the background was the government-funded Cooperative Research Centre for Food Industry Innovation, involved scientists from industry. That was me and my team, and also a Goodman Fielder team. We had the probiotic side, they had the prebiotic side. There was CSIRO scientists and University of New South Wales scientists as well. It was cited at the University of New South Wales in terms of the administration, and we were working on isolating and screening probiotic cultures and in determining the effect of various prebiotic fiber ingredients that boosted the numbers of probiotic culture cells to very high levels as they traveled down the gastrointestinal tract. And so the what of this talk is the best cultures. We must have the best cultures to be effective against all sorts of conditions, because antibiotics and other drugs and the Western diet, but particularly antibiotics, have done a lot of damage to our microbiome, as it's called, which is the collection of bugs in your gut. And we'll talk about the best prebiotic or fiber boosters, and also the delivery system, which we believe is superior to anything else. And if you look at what probiotics do, the cultures themselves are designed to suppress the bad bugs. That's their primary function, but also to talk to the immune system and stimulate it and strengthen it and reduce inflammation as well and things like that. But you must have the best strains. Now, this is work that you're looking at on the screen there from the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries at Camden Menangle, and it was commissioned by the International Animal Health Products, you can see on the top left there. And the guy who is their chief scientist used to report to me in the company that manufactured these cultures and others for the dairy industry. Now you can see there that chart, all those cultures, there's about 50 of them that were that are present in the Australian marketplace, and some there are many of them with the same name, the family and Christian name in that order, like Lactobacillus acidophilus, that's the genus and the species. If you look down the list, you'll see several of those, and the further down the list and into the green, the worse they get. So it's a case of oils ain't oils. So you can see there that the amount of suppression of this bad bug, the E. coli, you can see is around 40% for our cultures and getting progressively worse as you go down the list. And in fact, the startling thing is that about a third of the probiotics on the market actually stimulate bad bugs. Could you believe it? There's one there that almost doubles the growth rate of the E. coli, and that's the Lactobacillus rhamnosus that's on the bottom of the list. There are several good ones on the left-hand column. You'll notice there's a couple of red ones, which is good, slowing down the E. coli. So it's important to know which strain, not just species, that you're using. And we're using a couple of the best that our research indicated were the best. And that acidophilus strain was one that I isolated back in the 1980s from a Japanese food. So these are the cultures, the Lactobacillus acidophilus lafti strain L10. You'll notice the asterisk there because it's been renamed Lactobacillus helveticus. When I named it back in the 1980s, I called it Lactobacillus acidophilus because the techniques that we had then suggested that that's the group that it belonged to, and I called it LA1 in those days. But every time the name changes, it kind of makes it more difficult to connect to the literature, the research papers, but it's now called that. And that's particularly good for problems in the small intestine and for immunity, e.g. colds. It actually shortens the duration and severity, reduces the severity of colds, and reduces allergies. It switches off my hay fever, dust mite allergy, for example. And Bifidobacterium lactis lafti strain B94 is particularly good for problems in the large intestine, the colon. So that's your things like diarrhea and constipation and things like that. We include a total count like 15 billion of each of those per 5 gram dose, which is a dual sachet, and we'll talk about the dual sachet in a little while. The best prebiotic boosters, trehalose, which is mixed with the cultures, boosts the lactobacillus in particular and hopefully keeps the culture dry as well. The inulin and fibrate that we put in there, the fibrate is an arabinogalactan. It boosts the bifidobacterium, and of course there's a cross-feeding that goes on between the bifido and the lactobacillus as well. The inulin is about 50% fructooligosaccharide and boosts the bifidobacterium, particularly in the ascending colon. That's the first bit of the large intestine, which comes up your right-hand side, then across is the transverse colon, and then descending colon down your left-hand side. And so the branched arabinogalactan is a branch-shaped molecule, actually, which is more slowly utilized, boosts the already boosted bifidobacteria continuously through the rest of the colon. So you've got this double boost, a boost on top of a boost. And pig experiments showed that this type of combination, not exactly this one, but the straight chain and the long chain, they believe is doing the same thing. The prebiotics may thus possibly provide up to a 50-fold boost to the probiotic cell numbers. And when I spoke to the guy that ran that experiment in CSIRO, he said in humans, we'd probably expect a 200-fold boost. You won't get that with any other product on the market. Now, the best delivery system, moisture and oxygen are the enemies of long-term culture survival. So we package the powder in a triple laminate of poly, aluminium and paper. And the aluminium stops anything coming in to affect the cultures, any oxygen or moisture. And the unique dual sachet separates the dry cultures from their rather more moist packed lunch, further prolonging shelf life. And although we recommend on the pack that it be kept in the fridge, that's only if you want to be a fanatic about it. But you can, like when I go traveling, I don't bother putting it in the fridge, and it's ideal for that sort of thing. But certainly in the fridge, it would not lose anything significant in about 3 years. Then a delivery system continued with capsule products, which are the competition and the most popular way of delivering probiotics. The number of probiotic culture cells is severely reduced by the fact that the dehydrated culture cells in that capsule have to absorb concentrated hydrochloric acid in the stomach in order to come back to life and do their job, right? So you swallow the capsule, dissolves in your stomach, and your stomach has concentrated hydrochloric acid in it. It's carbattery acid. And it's amazing that our stomachs can contain that, but it's also designed, the stomach, to kill off bacteria. So now some cultures, to avoid that, are coated with a substance that resists acid, but then they go through the stomach, okay, intact, but they dissolve then, the capsule dissolves in the toxic bile, which is at the top of the small intestine, which is just as detrimental. Now, our product is dissolved in harmless water, thereby avoiding the problem and increasing culture survival because they come back to life in the water within a few seconds and they don't need to suck in acid or bile. So you get a much higher survival rate through the stomach. Now, shelf stable or refrigeration required. A lot of people now are going for shelf stable, no refrigeration required, and someone might say to you, well, I don't want that one, yours, because it has to be refrigerated. No, it doesn't. Look at this here, 25 degree storage of, say, the bifidobacterium. This was done at 60% relative humidity, which is excluded from our package anyway. So the effect is much, much less in our culture. But you can see that after 3 years, there's still a great deal of, a high number of viable culture cells, and ours would be even higher than that. So it really is shelf stable at room temperature, but I like to say, well, you know, to give it the best chance, if you're going to store it for 3 years, then keep it in the fridge. Otherwise, it's fine to leave it room temperature. And I've travelled for, say, a month, never bothered to put it in the fridge. How to use it? If just taking it to maintain good health, then one dose, which is a dual sachet, every 1 or 2 days is sufficient. If treating something related to gut issues, then up to 3 doses per day may be required. 2 is usually sufficient. You prorata it on a weight basis. So these are adult doses that I'm talking about. So if you've got someone that's half an adult's weight, give them half what I'm talking about. If you want to go even less than that, you can mix it in a jar, the dual sachet, and just use a spoon to take out whatever amount you think's appropriate. And you don't have to be exact about it at all because it's all food ingredients. It's not like a drug. You can't overdose. For babies who are not weaned, use only the culture sachet because the fibre might be, it might constipate them if you give them the fibre side, the prebiotic booster. So a tip of a teaspoon is fine for a newborn, but as I say there, you can't overdose. The healing crisis, some people will, as the bad bugs rapidly start to die off and release toxins, they may well have a negative, apparently negative reaction, but it's actually a good sign. And in cases like that, it's particularly people who have a lot of food sensitivities, dark shadows under their eyes, that sort of person. You need to tell them to do that trick of mixing it in a jar and then starting with just a small amount, say the tip of the teaspoon first day, 2 tips the next day, that sort of thing, and build up and expect that it could take as much as a month to get through that healing crisis. It's great for humans or animals. I've had stories of horses resurrected from the dead, dogs resurrected from the dead, and there's quite a few vets that use the formula as well. Treating people with bowel problems, first try a single dose in the morning and another at night, before or after food, either's fine. If response is only partial, increase the dose to 3 sachets and see what happens. If 3 sachets is not enough, suggest that they get their doctor or naturopath to test for protozoan parasites. And if present, treat with Saccharomyces boulardii. If you get yourself into that situation where somebody needs that extra advice and help, I'm quite happy to point you in the right direction. If someone wants to give me a call, go via Annie or Charlie, and they'll point you to me if they think it's appropriate. But actually, the boulardii, which is a probiotic yeast, is actually more effective, I've learnt today, just looking at research as late as today, as recently as today, that you get about a 94% cure rate with this boulardii, and with the antibiotics that they give the people, like the metronidazole, it's only about an 83% cure rate. In extreme cases, individuals may require the removal of their bowel bacteria and replacement with those from a healthy person via fecal enema, and we can point you in the right direction to the Centre for Digestive Diseases in Sydney, or there's probably equivalents up in Brisbane and so on. Now, here's the myth about probiotics that you'll all be aware of, because somebody will say that they're taking a probiotic to replace the good bacteria that have been wiped out by antibiotics, and they figure that they can just take it and then they'll be fixed and they won't need to continue taking it. That's a myth. It's impossible to replace the good bacteria that have been wiped out by antibiotics with probiotics. And the reason is that the immune system, there's several reasons. One is the immune system will recognize even probiotic bacteria as foreign and kick them out. That's why you can actually recover from food poisoning. It's not the fact that the salmonella is a bad bug. It's that it wasn't there when you inherited your first batch of bugs from your mother, and the immune system learnt to support those bugs and to kick anything else out. So there's that effect, but also in a breastfed baby's bowel, it's predominantly probiotics because there is in breast milk lactoferrin, which chelates or locks up iron so that it's not available for the bacteria in the gut. Probiotics don't need iron, but other bacteria like E. coli and Clostridia that make up the adult bowel microflora do. And so those probiotic type bacteria, if they're there, can predominate. But once you're weaned and iron becomes bioavailable to the other bacteria, then the probiotics fall to 1 or 2% of the level of the bacteria in the gut at the most. Even if one manages to establish in the gut, it won't stay at a level that is effective. So unless you, as it says here, we can, however, reproduce the conditions that suppress bad bacteria, thereby reducing inflammation, which we're going to talk about, and allowing the damaged intestine, which we'll also talk about, to regenerate, which it will, by administering probiotic cultures of high proven efficacy, which are being boosted to very high levels by a packed lunch of prebiotic fibre ingredients, and then continually topping them up on a daily basis. And that's important. It's like if you stop weeding your garden, what happens? The weeds come back. And the weeds will come back in your gut because it's just an ecosystem like your backyard is, and you have to keep that pressure on it, or the weeds will come back. Gut bacteria affect everything: brain, mind, bodily functions, the immune system, inflammation. The list goes on. The amount of research that's now being done in this area is phenomenal. Every man and his dog, well, perhaps not the dogs, getting in on it and finding all sorts of mind-blowing things. So if we talk about the effect on the brain, for example, there's a biochemical dialogue between gut bacteria and the brain. In other words, gut bacteria are producing compounds that cross the blood-brain barrier and affect the brain for better or for worse. And gut bacteria also are responsible for the build-up of amyloid plaque in the brain. That's Alzheimer's. In fact, E. coli will do that even in a test tube. It'll produce amyloid plaque. Modification of gut microbiota can slow down the development of Alzheimer's. So if someone's got Alzheimer's or something related to Alzheimer's, cognitive impairment, then you must get them on to a good probiotic product. No guessing which one I'd recommend. A study in mice and humans suggests that bacteria in the gut can influence the structure of the brain's blood vessels and may be responsible for producing malformations that can lead to stroke or epilepsy. It's just amazing what we're discovering now about the impact of bacteria in the gut on the whole of your body and brain. So the effect on the mind: depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, they've all been duplicated in mice by giving them, say, a mixture of bacteria, treating them, for example, with antibiotics. But also, if you've got a mouse that's got these things, then you can transfer the poo from one mouse to another and make the recipient mouse depressed and anxious. And, well, I don't know whether you can tell whether they've got OCD, but there's all sorts of tests you can do on these mice. A friend of mine, severe depression and anxiety, so uptight she would have to run like a semi-marathon every day to try and run off the anxiety. And after a few days on our product, she told me that the depression and anxiety just disappeared. And she said in amazement that she didn't need for a month to go for a run. She just went for 1.5 hour walk. In that time, didn't feel the need to run off that tension. And interestingly, she rang me very excited one day, said, "I've just had a colonoscopy. Normally I have 12 polyps, say. This time I had none." And so there is a connection, obviously, in her case, between her gut function and the bad bugs in her gut, which are causing the polyps, but also causing the depression and the anxiety. And OCD is now thought to be connected to this sort of thing as well. Autism and Asperger's syndrome, again, they've been able to duplicate autistic-like characteristics in mice. And we've had human beings also who've had a significant improvement in this sort of syndrome through using the product. And I know it's a very subjective thing, trying to determine what's going on, but the research has shown that autistic kids have a different set of gut bugs to normal children, and particularly in predominance are Clostridia that are producing neurotoxins and perhaps other compounds, but these are thought to travel up the vagus nerve and reach the brain, so coming from the gut to the brain. And there are thousands, literally thousands of compounds produced by gut microbes that affect brain function. And also they affect, the bacteria affect the permeability not only of the gut lining, but also the blood-brain barrier. So how important is it to get the gut bugs under control? And there's a link between autoimmunity, gastrointestinal disorders, and schizophrenia. Now, there can be, I should say at this point, that there are all sorts of also genetic factors in these conditions. In just about everything we talk about here, there will be a genetic background that's significant as well, like type 2 diabetes that we're going to mention in a little while is connected, that runs in families, along with polycystic ovaries and things like gestational diabetes. So there's a genetic component, and I don't want to give the impression that everything is down to the gut bugs. It's a combination of things. And diet will affect it as well too. We all know that a good diet can affect the gut bugs and the balance of the gut bugs, and that a good diet is important, and that the Western diet is bad and affects these things. All these things interact and combine to give you an outcome. But more and more it's being realized that the genetics that's been emphasized before, the diet that's been emphasized before, that's been the elephant in the room, which nobody had realized, was the gut bugs. And now everybody has said, the lights come on. We know the gut bugs are tremendously important in these things, and we can't manipulate our genetics, but we can manipulate our intestinal environment. Effect on the body. A healthy small intestine should be populated by bacteria that are like yogurt cultures. These are mainly streptococci and lactobacilli, and these don't produce gas. They're only weakly proteolytic. They suppress bacteria but are extremely sensitive to antibiotics. That's those fourfold things of significance. So when you feed yourself, you feed these bacteria in your gut, and they produce gas if they're gas producers. But the streptococci and lactobacilli don't produce gas. So a normal healthy person will not have gastric reflux and bloating and those sorts of things when they feed themselves. And also they won't get gut damage because they're not protein digesting bacteria, those. But directly you take antibiotics, and particularly the penicillin type antibiotics that are commonly given for things like sore throats and so on, these will knock out these so-called gram-positive bacteria, the streptococci and the lactobacilli, and you can easily wipe them all out totally. And then you can get dysbiosis, which is too many bad bacteria in the small intestine and colon. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is now commonly diagnosed, that's SIBO. And when you've wiped all those good bacteria out, these other bacteria come in and overgrow that area and fill that biological vacuum, if you want to call it that. And these often produce the gas, which leads to bloating and gastric reflux. They are often proteolytic, which damage the villi, leading to leaky gut syndrome, which is responsible for food sensitivities and autoimmune diseases. And this becomes a very slippery slope, which cascades into a whole lot of problems. So this is what the damage looks like to your intestine. Healthy intestine on the left with all those finger-like projections, the villi. This one on the right is magnified more than the one on the left. You can see the granularity is greater. And if you look at these structures below the villi, they're these highly more magnified structures here on the right. And the fact is that all the villi, those finger-like projection, are gone. They were up here, and they're all gone. And that would be diagnosed as celiac, but it's not the type of celiac that you're born with. It's which actually regulates the tight junctions in the wall of the intestine. If you've got too much zonulin, those things are weak, leak. But this is damaged. The gut has an enormous surface area, so for the absorption of vitamins and minerals, and the villi and microvilli on the villi are only one cell thick and vulnerable to damage by these protein splitting bacteria or protein digesting bacteria. So they digest the mucus layer that protects the intestine, that barrier. And reduction in surface area that you just saw there through bacterial damage leads to vitamin mineral deficiencies, with obvious implications for overall health. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of doctors, they'll say things like there's no point taking vitamins because it just goes out in your urine. Well, in the case of gut damaged people, they're probably right because there's not enough surface area. So if you're recommending the mineral solution that from Modere, which I take every day, and if you're recommending the multivitamins, which I take also every day, you've got to get the gut right first. So I take all of those things, the vitamins, the minerals, but I'm also washing those things down. I mix the minerals with my Modere Probiotic and wash down the vitamins with that. Conditions connected with that dysbiosis, which is too many bad bugs, not enough good ones. That's what dysbiosis means. There's the diarrhea and the constipation. Diarrhea is bad bugs irritating the gut, and water is pumped in to flush them out. Constipation is usually due to neurotoxins that have paralyzed the nerves in the bowel and stop the peristalsis, which moves the food down. people with constipation usually have much higher levels of neurotoxin-producing bacteria like E. coli and Clostridia. Bowel and liver cancer, E. coli, for example, will produce toxins that are carcinogenic by digesting the bile and producing torocolates. And the longer they're in contact with the bowel wall, the more likely you are to have bowel cancer. And the strains in our product have been shown to reduce the level of bowel cancer in the rat model. Obesity, we hear a lot about that these days. Gut bugs control not only the amount of energy derived from your food, but also your appetite. And so there's a lot of factors, of course, in obesity. A lot of fructose in milk and in drinks and things like that causing problems, and too much food and so on. Inflammatory bowel disease, we've seen reversal of these. Had a friend who had 5 major operations to remove parts of her bowel because she had severe Crohn's. They sent her about 6 years ago to Newcastle Hospital. She was supposed to start on new drugs that they were bringing in from America. And she had 3 weeks where she had to stay off the old ones, which weren't holding the Crohn's back. And the new ones, they said, start in 3 weeks, and they still won't be sufficient to stop it altogether. You'll need another operation in 2 years. But in the meantime, she just went on a dose of the Modere formula at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, and kept that up, and she is totally free of Crohn's. They can't find it in her gut now. But you have to keep doing it because the bugs that produce the Crohn's and the ulcerative colitis are still there. They're just being suppressed by our product. Insulin resistance, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, they're all, the gut bacteria are all a factor in that. We know that type 2 diabetics have got more E. coli in their gut, and also people with Alzheimer's have got more E. coli in their gut, and there's a correlation between type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's. Type 1's an autoimmune disease, and we'll talk about that in a minute if we've got time. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease also is down to what the gut bugs are producing from the food, and if they are producing toxins, they can damage the liver as if you were drinking a lot. Food allergies and sensitivities, again, all down to the gut bugs. Particularly if your gut is leaking, then the food molecules, large ones, go through the wall of the small intestine where they shouldn't go through. You remember that slide of showing the damage, and the immune system produces antibodies to it and makes you sensitive to that food. Non-effectiveness of various drugs like statins can be related to gut bugs. So different people have different results from drugs. Some people get no benefit from, say, statins, and that's related to the gut bugs. Arterial plaque and heart disease. If chlamydia pneumoniae gets into the blood in high levels, it's got on its surface a protein that resembles a protein in the wall of the arteries, and that when the immune system makes antibodies to that protein, those antibodies attack the wall of the arteries. Myosin is the molecule that's in the wall of the arteries, and that starts plaque forming, and that's the beginning of the heart disease. Inflammation happens when you've got bad bugs stuck to your receptors, 70% of which for the immune system are in the gut, and the immune system looks through into that inside of your intestine, and if there's a lot of bad bugs there, it produces inflammation. Inflammation is central to so many diseases and disorders. Fibromyalgia, for example. Even cancer, the more inflammation you've got, the more the cancer will progress. Acne, again, if the immune system is busy looking at fighting bugs in the gut, it hasn't got enough resources left over to fight the bugs in the skin, the Propionibacterium that causes acne. Multiple sclerosis, again, it's an autoimmune disease. Certain bacteria getting into the bloodstream, antibodies to structures on them, then attack similar structures on the myelin sheath, and that gives you multiple sclerosis. There's probably also an infection of the brain. The brain microbiome is a whole different subject I haven't got time to go into. Suppressed immunity, it was thought to be inherited at one stage, but what it's now been realised is that it's down to the bacteria that you inherit from your mother that are actually suppressing the immunity. Peyer's patches, there you see the big domes or the Peyer's patches that I just spoke about, and if good bacteria are stuck on there, the immune system says all is well and doesn't have to produce inflammatory compounds. But if bad bacteria are on there, you get these pro-inflammatory cytokines produced, and you can kick those off with the Modere Probiotic and inflammation levels will go down. And that's significant for a lot of diseases, particularly the asthma, hay fever type of things, and eczema as well. Now, as I said before, there's a genetic predisposition in a lot of these diseases, but you can't do anything about that. We're not going to genetically engineer each person to get rid of that. It's too late anyway. But it's exacerbated by bacteria, bad bacteria on the Peyer's patches, and can greatly be improved by replacing those bad bugs with good ones. In other words, taking the Modere Probiotic. Now, autoimmune eczema may take longer to improve because there's anything with an autoimmune disease can take longer to improve because the antibodies are still running around in the bloodstream. But normally things like diarrhea will and bloating and things like that will improve within 24 hours of taking the product. Constipation might start to improve after about 2 weeks of continuous consumption of our product, simply because although the bugs are suppressed straight away, the gut needs to come back to life. All those nerves need to regenerate, so that can take a few weeks. But I've seen total reversal of those sorts of things. I had a doctor who was completely constipated, and she said that that she used to only go once a week with the help of strong laxatives, but after taking our product for some weeks, and perhaps months, she declared herself healed. She said, "You've changed my life, you've fixed me." And then she said, "The biggest problem we've got walking through the door is bowel problems, and we do not know how to treat them." Well, I think we do. Chronic fatigue is another thing. Nutrient deficiencies can cause it. Toxins from too many bad bugs can cause it. The glandular fever virus can cause chronic fatigue. And Professor Clancy, the immunologist, has reversed that chronic fatigue caused by the glandular fever virus by using the acidophilus strain that we use. So he was instrumental in introducing this product to Modere in the first place. All right, so that's the end of the talk. It's 36 minutes, so we've managed to squeak it in. You can get these things from Proactive Health that might be useful to you. Feel free to contact them if you want them. But Annie, I'm happy to answer a few quick questions if people want to ask any.
Yeah, that's great, John. You are on time. That is absolutely fantastic. So, look, you covered a fair bit of ailments and how to use products and dosages. Just want to know if there's a few people on tonight's call. We've got 5 more minutes that we can actually answer any questions. While we have John online tonight, it's a great opportunity if you have any questions. But more importantly, if you have if we don't get them all answered tonight, John is more, as I said at the beginning of this call, happy to do another webinar, but going into more specifics with ailments and how the dosages of the probiotics can assist. So let's just see if anyone's got their hand up, if they've got any questions. That while we've got John, this is such a wonderful opportunity to have people listen in. And let me just see. I can see we've got one here from John Porter. John, I'll take your hand down, microphone. You're muted at your end, John. Do you want to answer that, please? Ask the question, I mean. You're right
All
to
good.
go,
Can you hear me,
John.
Annie?
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Sorry, I was just plugging my headset in. I just wanted to know the recommendations for like psoriasis. Just dealing with a little bit of that at the moment. Not me personally, but talking to some people about that. So, anything different or whatever? Not John, if you've got some words to elaborate, just specifically for psoriasis and etc. Or is it just sort of all caught into what we've been talking about tonight?
Okay. We have general rules of thumb for these things. Everyone is different because everyone's got a different set of bugs in their gut. You and I might share one bug if we're lucky. But basically, you start with taking 2 doses a day. You may wish to push the envelope further and go for 3 a day, let's say for a week or 2, and see what's happening. And you'll get an indication within a couple of weeks of the rate at which you should take this product, the level of the dosage. You might be able to get away after that with 1 dose per day. But these skin problems like rosacea and so on, I've seen people who, as you know, these things can come and go. They surge and then, you can go into remission and things like that. But he's been taking it for a number of years now and never had another occurrence. So I think inflammation's a big thing, and the product controls that quite effectively. So it's a matter of experimenting with all these things and just see what level you think is appropriate for you, because you're the only one who can work that out. But my rule of thumb is at least 2 doses a day if you're treating something. Now that can, drugs are cheaper because they're subsidised by the government and we're not. But, if you can get a result out of 2 or 3 doses a day, well, it's worth it, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
Awesome.
great, John. I think John will definitely do that. So I had Deborah King. So I just had Deborah's hand up. I don't know whether that's gone down, or I'll just unmute Deb. Are you there, please, Deborah King?
Yeah. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Deb.
I did actually type it in. I have type 2 diabetes, and the fasting sugar in the morning is slowly increasing. I used to be able to keep it under 7, but now it's sort of over 7. Just wondering whether the probiotic twice a day would help bring those levels down again.
Well,
I'm not on medication. I'm just doing it through diet.
Yeah. I happen to also have type 2 diabetes, and so I'm intimately acquainted with this. My diet was pretty atrocious, so that doesn't help. Look, there's a compound called berberine. I'm not sure whether it's in any of the Modere products, but berberine is actually more effective than metformin. So you just take a pill every, once or twice or 3 times a day when you're eating, and that'll give you the same effect as the metformin. So that will bring it back under control. Obviously avoiding sugar, but as I said, there's a genetic component to this particular condition. So we're going to have it unless we look after ourselves. But yes, probiotics are important because, as I said in the talk, we have too many E. coli in our gut, and the combination of the genetics and the dysbiosis. I mean, I've got irritable bowel syndrome that I keep under control with this probiotic, but that combination obviously is not totally sufficient, but it's a big component. Particularly when you're taking the berberine. The doctor said to me, keep taking your probiotic product. That's what he said.
Okay. I had heard about berberine. Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's in any of the Modere products.
No, I don't.
Have been fairly stringent for a while now with diet and exercise, and it was after menopause I ended up with high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and
Right.
eventually the diabetes. I can't find anybody on either side of my family that has diabetes. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I must have picked it up
Well,
somewhere.
you know, polycystic ovaries run in our family. My daughter's got it. Some of my cousins in England have got it. So that's associated with type 2 diabetes anyway. So
Yeah.
I guess I was set up for it. But I'm not noted for my self-control when it comes to things like chocolate. And, so you could try fasting. That's, has been shown to reverse type 2 diabetes in rats, completely fix it. And so whatever form of fasting you can use, that could be useful. They recommend like a 12-hour fast every day. So in other words, don't have breakfast, which sounds like not a good thing, but it is for type 2 diabetics to avoid having breakfast, to have that 12-hour fast. And they've been able to reverse diabetes, pre-diabetes, the insulin resistance with significant levels of fasting. And I mean, I reversed cancer with fasting. So it's a very powerful tool against a lot of these diseases. And I don't think our bodies are designed to eat every day. Certainly, historically, there were food shortages and, we're designed to fast, I think, or starve ourselves every now and again. Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Can I just add something else? I had tried the fasting, but I didn't sort of stick with it long enough because I just wasn't sure whether I was doing the right thing by myself. So, I'll go back and try that again. Thanks so much for that.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks, Deb. John, just while I find another hand up here, can you just tell us, I talked to you at the beginning about
Helicobacter pylori. Yeah. Interesting. The Professor Tom Borody at the Centre for Digestive Diseases owns the patents for triple and quad therapy that he invented for treating Helicobacter pylori. Now, there are some cases of stomach ulcers where they don't respond to the antibiotics. And he rang me one day and said that our product was actually reducing the counts of the Helicobacter in patients where they weren't responding to the antibiotics. So obviously it is having an impact on Helicobacter pylori. And so obviously it would be recommended for people who've got that. The only thing I would say is that anybody who's taking antibiotics, obviously the antibiotics will affect the probiotics. And it's an interesting question whether we should take the probiotic at the same time as we're taking the antibiotics or leave it till the course is finished. I had to have an antibiotic some time back when I had an operation, and I took the probiotic all the time, but I don't expect the same level of effectiveness while I'm on the antibiotics. That's all I'd say. But if you can't afford it, then at least start 2 days before you finish the antibiotics and try to separate them in time. Take the probiotic in between, as far removed from the antibiotic as you can.
Right. Thanks, John. That's great. Have another question. I have GERD. Will your probiotic help with that cough and choking feeling I get? From Tammy Corbett.
Yeah. That's GERD is this sort of gastric reflux and bloating type of condition. The answer is yes, it will. Likely to. Look, we can't make promises because it depends what's causing it. If there's a protozoan parasite that's doing it, our product will be less effective than if it's bacteria that are doing it. But I did have a doctor once say to me that he was had to sit up every night. He couldn't sleep lying down, but he slept in a chair. And he said that after 2 weeks on our product, he could sleep lying down. Then he said, "You've changed my life." So that's a GP saying that. So, it should help with GERD and go through that same process that I said. Try 2 or even 3 doses a day. But if it doesn't give you complete control. And by the way, the amount of control is always dose related. That's why I say 2 or 3, but 3 is always better than 2. And 4 would be better again, but it starts to get very expensive. But if that doesn't work at that level, then suspect a protozoan parasite. And I had one doctor who had brain fog, and he was a bit of an athlete. Did I say that? I was telling somebody else that today. And he said that our product, after 4 days, the brain fog lifted and the wall moved further away, but it wasn't a complete control. And I said to him, I suspect that you've got a protozoan parasite. And he got tested, and he came back to me and he said, your diagnosis was correct. He said, I've got Blastocystis hominis. And I said, well, get yourself treated for that. Then our product should help. Because antibiotics can affect about the good bacteria in your gut. And you would think, oh, no, I want to avoid having that happen. But our product will control usually the bacterial dysbiosis. There's a very good chance that it'll control bacterial dysbiosis, not so good at controlling protozoan parasites. But the Boulardii that I mentioned before is very good at doing that. All right.
So John, on that, our ParaCleanse, which is our parasitic cleanse that will help with that, is actually on sale tomorrow at 15% off. So anyone who's on the call tonight and would like to get rid of any parasites in their body, our chief ingredient is wormwood with 20 other herbs in there. So if anyone has got parasites or knows anyone with parasites, we have the strongest anti-parasitic herbal remedy in that I know of in Australia. So glad you brought that one up. So thanks, John. John, I have a number of questions. I've actually taken photos of them all, so we can actually ask those ones next time. Right. And I'll get those questions to you. Just wanted to say thank you very much. Next week's webinar that will be on is how to reducing inflammation with Modere. So reducing inflammation in the body with Modere is going to be the title of next week's webinar. And obviously the probiotic is going to be part of that, along with some other fabulous products that will actually help that inflammation that's that causes so much in the body. Cancer, as you said, all sorts of diseases, is an issue with inflammation. So we'll be talking about that next Tuesday night, sorry. So I just wanted to say a very big thank you. Thank you for everyone who got the questions in. I've actually had a chance to actually take, I think, mostly photos of that. I think I've got a few more coming in. Is it beneficial for anyone with lupus? I got that one. Yep, all good. All right, okay. I think there's a few more that's come in. Can we sit
all right,
yeah.
Save them all up for next time.
I will. So I just want to say thank you very much. Oh, there's heaps of questions coming in now, so I just have to take photos of them all. Sorry. Something about celiacs. Yeah, we need to start with a small dose. Yeah. Okay, so I've got to get all those questions done. Thank you very much, everyone. And when is part 2 again? Ellie, we actually haven't got a date on that yet. We'll just see how we go down the track. I've got to get the questions to John so he can get a chance to answer them. So thanks, everyone. Stay tuned and have an awesome week. And we will see you next Tuesday night for how to reduce inflammation in your body with Modere. So thanks, John. That was awesome. Fantastic information. So,
no problem. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.